The US economy surpasses growth expectations, but investors are weighing the potential impacts of a looming government shutdown. El Salvador's Bitcoin ambitions may face a setback as an International Monetary Fund deal looms, and we'll examine the Eurozone's projected GDP growth of 0.8% this year, following the revised November inflation rate. Hello, I'm Taiba Aydin with the latest business and finance news here on TRT World. We begin in the US, where the economy grew faster than expected in the third quarter. Gross domestic product expanded by an upwardly revised 3.1%, driven by robust consumer spending. It follows a previous estimate of 2.8% growth in the quarter. Meanwhile, the number of Americans filing for new applications for jobless benefits fell more than expected last week, almost reversing the prior 2 weeks' increases and suggesting that a gradual labour market slowdown remained in place. The upbeat reports come a day after the Federal Reserve delivered a third consecutive interest rate cut, but projected only 2 rate reductions in 2025. For more on this, let's speak with Hani Abouagla in Dubai. He's a senior market analyst at XTB MENA. Thanks for being with us, Hani. Firstly, what's driven the expansion in the US's third quarter GDP?
Okay, first, good morning and thank you for having me today. I think the GDP data, when it came just 3.1, higher than they expected and higher than the previous one also, it was 3% only. And I think it's driven mainly by the consumer spending. Consumer spending, I think, making the big chunk out of that jump, and also the government spending as well. Besides also the business activity and business investment, it improved a little bit. Away also from the uncertainty happening in the market, and also the tariffs that might be imposed from US on other countries, still the exports of US improved a little bit, especially going to Europe and Asia, especially with the US partners. But I think the most important is the consumer spending. As long as the consumer spending is very good, and I think it still stand with what the Fed says in the rate with the same day of the rate cut. I think it stands where the Fed stands now.
And the report comes just a day after the Fed triggered a stock market sell-off by signalling a slower pace of interest rate cuts next year. Could this stronger than expected data have any influence on the Fed's future outlook?
It might give some influence, but I think the Fed is very clear in his way with the interest rate cut, especially with the market that they were expecting more than 3 rate cuts or 4 rate cuts in the coming year into 2025. But I think with 2 rate cut only, and still focusing with inflation, and they understand that the inflation might increase a little bit with this consumer spending. I think they know that we might have a jump in the inflation, but still we will keep the same way we are acting with interest rates. So I think it won't change much the Fed policy, but still they will keep an eye on that one.
Okay, Hani, we will come back to you in just a moment after this. Meanwhile, a Republican spending bill designed to avert a government shutdown before Christmas has failed to pass in the House of Representatives. Backed by President-elect Donald Trump, the bill would have extended government funding beyond midnight on Friday. If lawmakers don't extend the deadline, a partial shutdown could begin as early as Saturday, disrupting Christmas travel, among other things, across the US. Let's go back to our guest, Hani. Okay, Hani, this looming US government shutdown, how could this affect the holiday season, and what's led to this?
I think the uncertainty is everywhere, especially with Trump coming to the White House. But I think it won't affect only the consumer confidence. Consumer confidence in the economy itself. I think it will not have that much effect in the economy currently, especially with this very strong GDP data. I think even the Fed in the press conference, they mentioned that we have a very strong economy, and I think it's obvious for almost 3 quarters we are having more than 2.8 and 2 and 3, and now we have 3.1%. I think with this this coming holiday, I don't think it will affect much the economy. But I think the most important, the market is waiting for the Trump on January. What you're gonna say exactly about the tariffs? What are you gonna say about the interest rate? What are you gonna say about the economy and the spending and the debt ceiling?
Okay, Hani Abuagla, Senior Market Analyst at XTB MENA. We will have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. Now, Europe has seen a rocky economic year. Projected GDP growth in the Eurozone for this year is estimated to be at a weak 0.8%, with the European Central Bank starting its rate-cutting policy and inflation on a downward trend. How is next year looking for the bloc? Emre Boz has more.
The European Central Bank has cut its growth forecast for next year to 1.1% from 1.3%. ECB President Christine Lagarde says that risks to economic growth remain tilted to the downside. The comments come as analysts forecast greater friction in global trade, and one of the struggles may include cautious consumers. Consumer confidence fell 1.2% in November in the Eurozone. This is due to the bloc's very restrictive monetary policy and slow economic growth. The hope for next year is to reverse this trend by entering a more dovish policy direction. The European Central Bank has just announced its fourth rate cut of the year, with rates down by 25 basis points to 3%, and markets are expecting another 25 basis point cut early next year. If the trend continues and rates continue to fall, this may improve consumer and investor confidence within the bloc. The decision to cut rates is because of falling inflation expectations. Inflation is forecasted to gradually decrease to 2.4% in 2024, falling further to 2.1% the next year. Another major concern is the potential for more US tariffs from President-elect Donald Trump. Trump has threatened to impose up to 10 to 20% tariffs on all US imports, and this has made many European firms concerned about competing in the US market. Political uncertainty may also impact economic and market performance in the Eurozone. Already, France and Germany are experiencing political turmoil. French Prime Minister Michel Barnier has been ousted after a vote of no confidence. And in Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz lost a confidence vote, paving the way for elections in February. With France and Germany as the bloc's strongest economies, an environment of political instability may slow economic growth for the upcoming year.
Let's get more on this now with Francesco Rizzuto, Professor of European Law and Dean of the School of Law at Liverpool Hope University. Welcome back to the programme. Francesco, firstly, can the ECB rate cuts revive growth amid this weak economic growth and low confidence?
The simple answer to that is no. On its own, no. It won't necessarily improve consumer confidence, and it won't deal with many of the deep-rooted structural problems that the European Union and obviously the Eurozone faces. I think we have a recipe for improving things systemically, if I can use a slightly fancy term, and those are the two reports that were issued very recently, the Draghi report and the Letta report, which was put out slightly earlier than that last year. Look, the central bank can play a role, interest rates can play a role, but the European Union faces more significant problems. Not only Trump, if you like, but and getting over the pandemic and getting over the cost of the Ukraine war. It really needs to deal with other issues, completing the internal market, making sure that they are able to mobilize collective financial power, if you like, to compete in a world that is now become very, very challenging for the European Union.
Right, and in just a month's time, Donald Trump will return to office. How might his threatened tariffs impact Eurozone businesses and competition?
I think there are many people in Europe, and yesterday's council meeting was case in point, who are quite worried, but they're not leaping. Without a doubt, European businesses are rather concerned, particularly those that export to the United States, when they're going to have to face tariffs of 10, 20%. So this is not a good sign. This is not good, especially when you think about the other structural problems that the European Union economy has, and that is the green transition and its cost, the digital transition, if I can call it that, the challenges that are demographic in nature. Trump is simply, if you like, an added factor of uncertainty, but there is fear. But we don't actually know until Trump gets there whether he is going to do what he says he's going to do. And I think it's probably sensible to assume that he will. And that means the European Union has to look inwardly, really, on how it's going to face these challenges collectively.
Right, and meanwhile, Europe's two largest economies are facing political instability. What broader risks does this have to the Eurozone?
I think that they're slightly different. I actually don't see, if you like, if we take Germany first of all, obviously there's likely to be a change of government. In terms of the Euro direction of that government, that will not change. A Christian Democratic led government or CDU led government in Germany is not going to radically change, if you like, its pro-European stance. I think, though, that what that government does have to face is the fact that the German economic industrial model is in trouble. You only have to look at the German car industry, really. So how does Germany deal with this? Does it try and deal with this on its own, or does it throw in its lot with those who favor the Draghi approach, if you like, of collectively mobilizing European resources? So that's the challenge there. In France, I think the real challenge is massive debt and the refusal, because France is a democracy, and the refusal of the population in France, or a significant proportion of the population, to accept the fact that they're living beyond their means. France has a massive, massive debt, and that needs to be brought under control. Now, one way of dealing with that is to grow. Well, the French economy is not doing too badly, but it's not doing that well. So, if you like, the challenges are slightly different. Will France end up with a government that lasts more than 3 or 4 months? That's the other challenge. So that will not make navigating the French economy within the context of the European Union easier. But the challenges are slightly different. But obviously, when you take them together, this is one of the, if you like, structural challenges that the Eurozone faces when two of its economic motors are spluttering or operating at slightly different speeds and with slightly different objectives.
Professor Francesco Rizzuto from Liverpool Hope University, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure. Good morning.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country won't be safe without US backing. He was speaking at an EU leaders summit on Thursday, where the conversation was dominated by Donald Trump's return to office next month and what it means for the biggest conflict in Europe since the Second World War. Paul Hawkins reports.
After almost 3 years, how long will this last? Because a month from now, Ukraine's biggest military donor will undergo a change of management. And that could bring an end to the war.
Everyone's being killed. It's the worst carnage that this world has seen since World War II. I've had pictures of fields where bodies are lying on top of bodies. It's got to stop. We'll be talking to President Putin, and we'll be talking to the representatives, Zelensky and representatives from Ukraine. We got to stop it. It's carnage.
But until he outlines the terms or concessions of any future peace deal, Ukraine is nervous.
It's very difficult to support Ukraine without American help. And that's what we will discuss with President Trump when he will be in the White House. We need very much unity between the United States and EU and countries of Europe. This is very important. We need this unity to achieve peace. And I think only together the United States and Europe can really stop Putin and save Ukraine.
But his problem is that behind the smiles of Thursday's family summit photo, the EU is deeply divided on what happens next in Ukraine. With those that want to keep fighting,
I hear some rumors in the air about possible peace negotiations. And my opinion is that probably it's too early.
And those that want to start talking.
The plan is on the table. There is, you can take it or leave it.
You know that I am very firmly in favor of that. When you are clearly positioned and have a firm posture, then you also have to talk to the Russian president. I did that myself before the war and told him what I had to say.
Speaking of which, would he be willing to talk?
We are ready to conduct dialogue without preconditions, but based on what we agreed on. I have already said it 100 times. During the negotiation process in Istanbul at the end of 2022, but also on the basis of the realities on the ground today.
In other words, both sides have a month to gain as much advantage as possible before President-elect Trump takes office and the talking begins. Paul Hawkins, TRT World.
Europe's love affair with coffee and croissants could soon turn sour. A decline in milk production and climate-affected harvests have sent coffee bean prices and butter prices to record highs, putting increased pressure on bakeries across Europe to pass these higher costs on to consumers. Omar Bakalolo has the story.
For many Europeans, starting today with a cup of coffee and a croissant is more than just a habit. It's a cherished ritual. But that tradition may become more expensive this winter. Rising costs for butter and coffee beans are threatening to turn a once affordable indulgence into a luxury item.
Butter prices rise so shortly at Christmas, and consumers notice this with a slight delay, because at some point the producers, in this case us, naturally pass on the higher prices that we had to pay when purchasing.
Butter prices have surged by more than 25% across Europe since September, reaching record highs. That's because of a sharp decline in milk production last year in key regions, as lower profits discourage dairy farmers. Some bakers are now turning to cheaper alternatives like margarine or reducing the size of their croissants to manage rising costs.
You can make the product smaller in size even though the clients always have access to prices and weights. But it's the only way, or else you squeeze it out of your profit margin. But with my taxes, my employees' electricity, water, you have to manage that. On the one hand, you're expected to make your customers happy, but you also have to be a reasonable business owner if you want to survive in the long run.
On the coffee side, global prices are also at historic highs. Brazil, the world's largest coffee producer, has faced droughts and frost, severely reducing yields. Other top exporters like Vietnam and Colombia have also faced similar challenges with extreme weather. For farmers, the rising prices present a bittersweet reality.
We farmers should be happy when the price increases, but due to this throughout, we are not happy because the price increases but the output decreases. So in general, we are happy and we are sad at the same time because the climate changes erratically and we can't grasp those changes.
As prices climb, the coffee and croissant ritual has become a symbol of guns or butter dilemma. Consumers may soon need to decide whether to enjoy their favorite tradition less often or pay a little more for the pleasure. Ömer Bakalolu, TRT World.
Now a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. Japan's inflation jumped 2.7% in November, driven by higher energy and food costs. Rice prices soared 64% due to poor harvests, pushing overall prices up. Meanwhile, the yen weakened after the Bank of Japan kept borrowing costs unchanged. Mexico's central bank has cut its benchmark interest rate by 0.25 points to 10%, marking the fifth reduction since March. Annual inflation in Latin America's second largest economy dropped to 4.55% in November. But uncertainty looms as US President-elect Donald Trump threatened to impose tariffs on Mexican imports. Turkey's Pegasus Airlines has announced a $36 billion deal to buy 200 Boeing 737 MAX 10 aircraft, marking its largest order ever. The first 100 planes will be delivered starting in 2028, with options for additional purchases based on market needs. And Argentina is negotiating a new loan with the IMF to replace its $44 billion agreement. Economy Minister Luis Caputo expects the new program to include additional funds. This would mark Argentina's 23rd agreement with the IMF following decades of economic challenges and unmet targets. El Salvador's Bitcoin dream might be shattered. With an International Monetary Fund deal on the horizon, the nation must decide whether to stick with its gamble or retreat to more conventional paths. Christina Simic reports.
It all began in 2021.
The Bitcoin law is approved.
With those words, El Salvador made history, becoming the first nation to embrace Bitcoin as legal tender. Businesses like George Solis's restaurant dove into the crypto dream.
In business, it's pretty basic. I receive, collect with Bitcoin, and accept Bitcoin. After that, we set aside a portion for savings. And if not, if we don't have enough due to cash flow, there's that backup we have to cover a purchase or something extra.
But the dream has hit a speed bump. On Wednesday, El Salvador signed a $1.4 billion loan agreement with the IMF to stabilise its economy. The IMF wrote in a statement, "The program is also expected to catalyse additional financial support from the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank and other regional development banks for a combined overall financial package of over $3.5 billion over the program period." But the deal comes with a catch. It requires the nation to scale back its Bitcoin policies, including that taxes should be paid in dollars. Private companies will also be free to choose if they want to accept Bitcoin. Timing of the decision is surprising, as Bitcoin recently hit a new high of $108,000. El Salvador holds 5,968 Bitcoin, currently valued at approximately $594 million. So is El Salvador's Bitcoin experiment over, or is this just a recalibration of the idea? The world will be watching as the nation navigates its next steps. Christina Simic, TRT World.
In southern Morocco, women have been weaving rugs for generations. But today, this ancient craft is facing challenges. From low earnings to growing competition, artisans are fighting to keep their traditions alive. Lara Kılıçarslan has the story.
In southern Morocco, weaving is more than just a skill. It's an art passed down through generations, using techniques that are centuries old. Here, women work tirelessly on wooden looms, crafting rugs that are both beautiful and meaningful. Known for their bold patterns and vibrant colors, they hold deep cultural significance.
There is exceptional mastery in the making of these rugs. The unique aspect of these carpets is that their value increases over time.
The process is slow and detailed. A single carpet can take up to 4 weeks to complete, and then sells for roughly $24 at local markets, while middlemen resell them for hundreds, even thousands in cities. They work long hours, yet see little profit. These capable women say it's disheartening.
We have to sell our carpets to make a living, but we have great difficulty finding a buyer who will appreciate their value.
While government does offer some support, fresh initiatives in the region offer hope. A newly launched exhibition space allows women to sell their rugs directly to buyers. And courses in digital marketing are helping weavers find customers beyond their villages.
If we give value to this product, if we give it the quality and set the price that allows those who work on the carpets to live comfortably, both financially and economically, we'll be able to attract young people.
Beyond its cultural significance, weaving also holds economic promise. These programs could boost the local economy and help more women become entrepreneurs. For many, these rugs symbolize the possibility of weaving a brighter and more independent future. Lara Kılçarslan, TRT World.
Turkish Energy Minister Alparslan Bayraktar has announced that the US has granted Turkey an exemption from sanctions on Gazprom Bank, Russia's third largest bank. The decision allows Turkey to continue its natural gas payments to Russia without the risk of penalties. In November, the US imposed new sanctions on Gazprom Bank aimed at curbing purchases of Russian gas. The move was part of US President Joe Biden's broader push to penalize Moscow for its invasion of Ukraine as he prepares to leave office in January. Well, that's all your business news for now. Thanks for watching. The Newsmakers is next.